Before I start talking, let me get this off your head because some of you will probably be thinking about this and it will probably distract you for the whole video. So let's just take care of this now. I know your mind will go to the man that was on the tree next to Christ when Christ was about to die, when Christ was hanging on the tree, right? He asked the thief, he asked Christ, remember me when you enter your kingdom. And then Christ told him, truly I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise, right? Christ did not say you will be with me in heaven. He said you will be with me in paradise. So some would say, well, when you die, you're going to heaven because Christ told the beggar you would be with me in paradise. There are two ways you can read that scripture. You can read it this way. Truly I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise. Or you can read it like this. Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. Where you put the comma is very important. If you put the comma before or after today, it could either mean that Christ is telling him that the man will be with him in paradise that very day, or he's speaking to him today, like, I'm telling you today that tomorrow I'm going to beat you up, right? I'm telling you today, yo, tomorrow I'm going to see you. There's a difference where you put the comma. In the original Greek, there are no commas in that portion where Christ spoke. So it is up to you to determine what Christ is saying. But now, what is Christ saying? First of all, just know, how long was Christ dead for? For 3 days. Christ did not go anywhere for 3 days. So he couldn't have meant that the beggar would be with him that very day in paradise, because Christ was nowhere for 3 days. He was on earth. Also, so that's how you know that he did not mean that very day he was going to go with him to paradise. He was saying that he's talking to him today, that one day he will be with him in paradise. Another clue that you have is the scripture where it says that no man has ascended to heaven except he who descended. This is in the book of John. So this was written after Christ had went to heaven. So if Christ went to heaven that day with the beggar, or let's say after the 3 days when Christ rose up, Christ did not go to heaven for another 40 days afterwards. Because remember, when Christ was resurrected, he continued to show himself to his disciples, one day, the next day he would disappear. And then remember the disbelieving Thomas, he said he needed to see the wounds in the hands to know that Christ had risen. Christ was there for 3 days. And then after he was resurrected, he was on the earth for another 40 days. So the beggar was not in heaven with Christ at all. And after Christ was resurrected, John wrote in the book of John that no man has ascended to heaven except he who descended. So the beggar was not in heaven with Christ. So what Christ is talking about is the resurrection. That in the resurrection, that man will be resurrected and he will be with Christ and God in paradise. Not in heaven, in paradise. There's a difference, but this video is not going to be about that. I just want to get that off of your mind. So now, let's go back to the real topic, hell. All right, let me just jump right into it. Revelation 20, verse 12. Now, of course, I've used these scriptures already, but I want to start it off with this particular. Revelation 20, verse 12. All right, let's begin. Let's start from verse 12. And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and scrolls were opened. But another scroll was opened. It is the scroll of life. And the dead were judged out of the things written in the scrolls, according to their deeds. And the sea gave up the dead in it. And death and hell gave up the dead in them. Those in hell are dead. Okay, let me continue. The sea gave up those dead in it. And death and hell gave up the dead in them. And they were judged according to their deeds. And death and hell were hurled into the lake of fire. Hell is being hurled into a lake of fire. Death is being hurled into a lake of fire. This means the second death. the lake of fire. The notion today is that hell is a place of fire, right? So hell is being thrown into a lake of fire. So fire is being casted into a lake of fire. Does that make sense to you? Okay. The word hell is a relatively new word. Not the concept of hell. The word itself, hell, is a relatively new word. It's an English word. And is derived from, check this out, is derived from the pagan goddess Hel, with one L, H-E-L, not two L's. She is the daughter of Loki. You all know, you've been watching the movies, Marvel's movies with Thor, right? His brother, Loki, or half brother, you want to call it, Loki. Loki's daughter is Hel. She is the goddess of the underworld. That is where we get the word, the English word, hell. And the concept of hell is derived from that pagan mythology and Greek pagan mythology, Hades, the god of the underworld. And we're using that Roman mythology, Egyptian mythology. Who is it, Osiris or Isis? I don't follow too much into that, but one of them is the Lord of the underworld, you want to say. And a lot of Christians attribute the devil as the Hades of the underworld. Many things is wrong with that, because the concept of hell, the word hell itself, is coming from the daughter of Loki, and the concept of it is coming from pagan mythology. The Bible itself does not teach hellfire. As we just read, hell itself, or we shouldn't be using the word hell, because if hell is a recently derived English word, then what was the word prior to hell? It was Sheol, okay? Well, Sheol is Hebrew. Hades is Greek. Hell is English. But let's go back. What does Sheol mean? Sheol just means your pit, wherever you're buried, your grave. The word hell literally also means to cover up something under the ground. Okay? So even the word hell itself does not have the notion of a fiery place. The idea of fire came in through pagan mythology. So what does the Bible have to say about the condition of hell, or the condition of Sheol, or the condition of Hades? Psalms 146 verse 4. Speaking about when the day a man dies, his spirit goes out. He goes back to his ground. In that day, his thoughts perish. We were crafted from the ground. God told Adam and Eve. God told Adam, actually, and Adam related to Eve. He told Adam, the day you eat from the tree, you will positively die. And a day to God is about 1,000 years in the eyes of man. Judgment day is 1,000 years. Adam died at age 900 and something, almost 1,000 years. That's almost one day in the eyes of God. He said, from dust you were made, to dust you will return. He was made from dust. He returned to the ground where God crafted him from. God did not tell him that if you eat from the forbidden tree, I'm going to burn you and torment you forever and ever and ever in hell. That would have been more of probably a motivating factor to Adam to not eat from the tree. Okay, God didn't tell him that though. God told him, the day you eat from it, you will die and you will return back to the ground. Psalms, written by David, a prophet, said, his spirit goes out, he goes back to his ground. In that day, his thoughts perish. So mentally, you're not even, mentally, you don't even exist when you're dead. You're in a coma, a much deeper coma. No dreams, anything. Let's continue. Psalm 6, verse 3 through 5. Yes, my own soul has been very much disturbed. And you, O Yehovah, how long? Do return, O Yehovah. Do rescue my soul. Save me for the sake of your loving kindness. For in death there is no mention of you. In hell, who will laud you? Psalms 115, verse 17. The dead themselves do not praise Jah, nor do anyone going down into silence, or the pit, the grave. Ecclesiastes 9:5. For the living are conscious that they will die. You and I, one day we know we're going to die. But as for the dead, they are conscious of nothing at all. Neither do they have any more wages, because the remembrance of them have been forgotten. The dead are conscious of nothing at all. Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, all that your hand finds to do, do with your very power, for there is no work, nor devising, thinking, nor knowledge, thinking, nor wisdom, thinking. In hell, the place to which you are going. So, if hell is this place where you are conscious and being tormented by fire, how can you feel your torment if there is no knowledge that you're there? If there's no consciousness in the place where you are going, how can you be alive to be tormented? It makes no sense. So then you would ask, now see, just off of these few scriptures that I've read, you see the concept of what hell is. Now get the idea of get that preconceived idea of hell from your mind, because the word hell itself does not even mean a place of fire. Hell itself means your grave, to cover something over. When you're buried, you're covered over with earth, aren't you? So that's what hell literally means. But yet we add this paganized conception to it. The only two places in the Bible that indicates anything about a place where you're being tormented is in the book of Revelation and in the four gospels where Christ was speaking. Let's talk about the one in the book of Revelation first. He says, the dead will be tormented forever and ever and ever, right? In the lake of fire. The word that John used for torment should not be translated as torment. The literal words that John used in Greek has two meanings: tombstone or jail. When you're dead, you're in your tombstone. John is saying you'll be in your tombstone forever and ever and ever. He's saying you'll be in jail forever and ever and ever. But if you say you'll be tormented forever and ever and ever, that's now adding the idea of being alive and conscience and being tormented. But the Bible is already telling us that the dead are conscious of nothing at all. You return back to the ground. There is no knowledge in hell. So how are you being conscious of your torment if there's a torment? And the word is not even torment. The word is tombstone. Everyone who is dead right now that has a tombstone, that is what John is referring to. Everyone that is dead right now that cannot live, they are literally in jail. They are being jailed from living. They are being jailed from life. They cannot work. There is no work, nor knowledge, nor power, nor perception in hell, the place that you are going, or in Sheol, the place that you are going. You understand now? And remember the scripture that I read in the beginning.
hell is being casted into a lake of fire. So hell cannot be a place of fire that is being casted into a lake of fire. It makes no sense. And death is also being casted into a lake of fire. This should tell you that it's symbolic, because death cannot literally be thrown into. Is death something that you can hold and throw into fire? So it's symbolic. So if that's symbolic, why is it that you should actually take the torment? Even if it is torment, why should that even be literal? And it's not even torment. You see, the whole thing is demonic. Now, the idea is when you're bad and you die, you go to hell and you're being tormented, right? And the idea is that right now, currently, as we're speaking, people are being tormented, right? Okay. Let me read Revelation 20, verse 12 again to you. And think about this. Well, actually, let me start from 13. No, 12. And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and scrolls were opened. But another scroll was opened. It is the scroll of life. And the dead were judged out of those things written in the scrolls, according to their deeds. According to their deeds. They are being judged according to what they did while they were alive. And the sea gave up the dead in it, and death and hell gave up the dead in them. And they were judged according to their deeds. It is now at this point that they are being judged. At a point of revelation. The sea gave up the dead in it, and death and hell gave up the dead in them. Those in hell are dead. They're not conscious. They're not being tormented. Those in hell are dead. The dead and hell gave up the dead in them, and they were judged individually according to their deeds. It is now at this point, when everyone is in front of the great white throne, that they are being judged. So if it is at that point that they are being judged, shouldn't hell, if it does exist, shouldn't hell begin at that point? Torment, shouldn't it begin at that point? But no. We're saying no, it's taking place right now. No. According to the Bible, even if that was to be the case, even if hell is a place of fire, it is not currently going on. It'll go on when death and hell give up the dead in them, and then they'll be judged according to their deeds. But then again, of course, we know they're dead. And the lake of fire, hell, is going to be thrown into a lake of fire. What does that mean, lake of fire? I explained this in a different video, much better than I'm explaining it now. Death will be thrown into a lake of fire. Lake of fire, the Bible uses fire as a expression for destroying something. So death being thrown into a lake of fire, death will be destroyed. Death will be no more. Hell thrown into a lake of fire, no more. The devil thrown into a lake of fire, no more.
Remember that the judgment is the lake of fire, which only happens at a time when all are in front of the great white throne of God. So the lake of fire, which you think is a literal fire, will only take place after the one seated on the great white throne has judged everything and rendered a final verdict. This is why it is written that the devil will, at that point in time, along with death and hell and the false prophets and those misleading the entire world, will at that point in time be thrown into the lake of fire. So this lake of fire is not literal, because even death and hell are both thrown into it. Remember that the torment you are thinking of is nothing more than death itself. All those who have died are literally being tormented in the sense that they want to live, but they cannot live. Death in itself is the basanos, the word that John used. Basanos can be translated as torment. It can be translated as jail. It can be translated as tombstone. Because all those who are dead cannot live. So symbolically, it is as if they are being tormented or tortured from being able to live. But as we have come to see, based on the Bible, that torment is the worst word you can use, because torment would contradict the Bible, which the Bible tells us that those who are dead are not conscious, and you cannot possibly be tormented unless you are conscious of your torment. Understand this. Even Christ himself was tormented in hell for 3 days because Christ could not live. It is as if, symbolically, it is as if Christ was tormented for 3 days. He was in his tombstone for 3 days. He was in jail for 3 days. So which word is better to use? Christ was tortured or tormented for 3 days in hell, or he was in jail, or he was in his tombstone for 3 days? You see the problem with the word torment? Death itself is the torment. Death itself is the jail. Death itself is the tombstone. You are prevented from being alive. In the eyes of God, this is enough punishment. He does not need to kill you and then what? Continue to torture you after you have already died? So now basically the obvious question is, what is the second death? The second death and the lake of fire are both the same thing. So if a man dies, right, he has gone through the first death. If he goes before the great white throne and God judges him that he must die again, this is the second death. This second death means God will never bring him back again for anything, because God has already judged him after the man has died his first death. God has now brought him back to judge him, to see whether he should continue staying dead or if he should come back to life. So the second death means you will never come back. It is also the lake of fire. It is as if God has thrown you into fire and has destroyed you completely. So by him throwing death into the lake of fire, it means death will never come back. Death will be no more. The former things have passed away. Remember, death will be no more. Food shortages will be no more. Pestilences and diseases will be no more. The former things have passed away. Hell will be thrown into a lake of fire. Hell will be no more. The devil thrown into a lake of fire. The devil will be no more. Joshua basically just finished destroying a certain city, and they burned it, right? They burned the city to the ground. And this is what Joshua 8 verse 26 through 27 says. And Joshua did not draw back his hand with which he stretched out the javelin until he had devoted all the inhabitants of Ai to destruction. Only the domestic animals and the spoil of the city Israel plundered for themselves, according to Jehovah's word that he had laid in a command upon Joshua. Then Joshua burned Ai and reduced it to an indefinitely lasting mound, as a desolation down to this day. And check out this one, Isaiah 34, verse 8 through 10. For Jehovah has a day of vengeance, a year of retributions for the legal case over Zion. And her torrent must be changed into pitch, and her dust into sulfur, and her land must become a burning pitch. By night or by day it will not be extinguished. To time indefinite its smoke will keep ascending. From generation to generation she will be parched or burned. She will continue to be burned forever and ever, and no one will be passing across her. So the land will be a desolate waste, and no one will be, going through that land. No one can live in that land. No one can grow any sort of food in that land. If you were to go to that location in this present day that Isaiah is talking about, do you really think you're going to see fire there? The city's burning up till this day, forever and ever and ever? That's absurd. So what does that mean? It's symbolic in the Old Testament. The whole idea is when you're dead, you're dead. Then all of a sudden, now, during the Dark Ages and the Catholic Church ruling everything, this whole idea of torture while you're dead is in the picture. Because now, instead of using the literal word jail, they're saying, instead of saying you will be in jail forever and ever and ever,
they're saying you'll be tormented forever and ever and ever. But the problem with torment is, if you're going to be tormented, you have to be alive in some way. Your mental faculties or your spirit has to be alive in some form, shape, or way for you to experience the fact that you're being tormented. Right? So, but the Bible is telling us that you're dead when you're dead. And God says that the soul that is sinning, it itself will die. So your soul is dead. Your spirit is dead. Your brain is dead. The word torment makes it more demonic, because now you're thinking, wait, so I'm going to be alive when I'm dead and God is going to be burning me, literally burning me forever and ever and ever? That's a demonic teaching. It's a trickery of the devil to make it seem like hellfire actually exists. But just like in the book of Isaiah, in the book of Joshua, those literal cities are not being burned today forever and ever and ever. So too in Revelation, it doesn't literally mean that they will be burned forever and ever and ever. It's a symbolism for saying the person will be destroyed. They will not live forever and ever and ever. Also, in Revelation, it says that hell and the devil and death will be thrown into the lake of fire. So, is death alive? Does death have a conscience? So, is God going to be tormenting death forever and ever and ever? I thought hell is a place of fire. So what? Hell is going to be thrown into the lake of fire. So fire is being thrown into fire, and hell is going to be tormented day and night forever and ever and ever. Does that make sense to you? And the devil is going to be in the lake of fire, and he's going to be tormented forever and ever and ever. You see the problem with the word torment? Just because something could be translated into several words doesn't mean you should use any of those words that you choose to. No. Pick the word that best fits the description of the Bible. Torment is the worst word you can use, because now it contradicts the whole Bible. Because when a person is dead, he's dead. And God is not evil to torment someone after they've already died. Death is the punishment. Torment after death is completely unnecessary. And it's actually wicked and evil. That's something the devil would love to do to you. And that's something the devil would love for you to think a God of love will do to you if you don't obey him. Those in that lake of fire basically means they will be destroyed forever and ever and ever. They will not be resurrected. Let's say I die right now. I am not in the lake of fire, because if God was to put me in the lake of fire, he's basically saying Samuel will never come back, because fire means I will never resurrect him again. The devil will be thrown into the lake of fire. He will never come back. Death will be thrown into the lake of fire. Death will be no more. Death will never come back. Remember, death will be no more. Food shortages will be no more. Sicknesses and diseases and pestilences will be no more. The former things have passed away, because the former things have now been casted into the lake of fire. But the former things are not literally being alive and burned and roasted and toasted, like tortured, tormented forever and ever and ever. No, the former things are now in jail. They cannot work. When you're in jail, you're not free to do what you want to do. So literally they are in jail. Death is in jail forever and ever and ever. It will never be set free to come back and harm mankind ever again. The devil will be in jail forever. He will never be released to come back and harm mankind ever again. You understand? So that is what the Bible is trying to say, and that's what God is trying to say. But when you put the word torment, it throws everything out of whack. They try to use what Christ said about Gehenna as proof that hell is a place where you're alive and being tormented forever and ever and ever.
One where God says, the soul that is sinning, it itself will die, right? The soul that is sinning, it itself will die. And then Christ is saying, do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. But fear the one who can destroy both body and soul in Gehenna. So you're probably wondering, so is the soul being destroyed or is the soul just dying? Now, in the first scripture, remember there are two deaths. The first death, as you can see in this picture, is the one on the top. That's regular death. Everybody who is dead right now is in the first death. So that's just the part where it's like they have been killed. They're dead, right? The soul that is sinning, it itself will die. That's the first death. They're dead. The second death is symbolized by fire. Now, the literal place outside of Jerusalem was called where they burned garbage, and they threw the dead bodies of criminals that were already dead. That place was called Gehenna. That was a place that they kept burning with fire. So because, that's a lot of trash. So when you burn it with fire, you can use it as manure, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to burn trash, not just keep it in a trash yard. So they will keep that place burning. So Christ was turning their attention to that literal place of fire in Gehenna. He was saying, do not fear the one who can just kill you. Like I can just kill you. Anybody can just kill you. A disease can kill you. You're dead. You're in the first death. Do not fear that first death. Do not fear anyone who can put you in that first death where you're just dead. But fear the one who can destroy you, both your body and your soul in Gehenna. So when he says Gehenna, automatically their mind goes to what? This place of fire. They know everything that goes into the fire is destroyed, is not coming back. So Christ is basically saying the first death you can be resurrected from. Everyone that you see there in the top portion of the picture is in the first death. That's everybody right now. Everybody's in the first death. They can be resurrected. But if God throws somebody into the second death, he's basically saying that person has been casted into the lake of fire. He will never come back. So when the Bible says that death will be thrown into the lake of fire, or death will be thrown into Gehenna, he's saying death will never come back. When he's saying hell will be thrown into the lake of fire, that should tell you that hell is not a place of fire. Hell is just wherever you are when you're dead. Hell will be thrown into the lake of fire. Hell will be no more. Death will be no more. The devil will be thrown into the lake of fire. All of this is the second death, which is symbolized by fire, which is also symbolized by what Christ said when he said Gehenna. If you were living in Jerusalem at that time, you would know that Christ is alluding to fire. So if I had a sheet of paper right now and I tore up the sheet of paper, in a way I can bring that paper back, through meticulous means, working on it day and night. I could possibly bring that paper back. But if I was to burn that paper with fire, the paper is destroyed. I cannot bring it back. So Christ and God are using an illustration for you to get the point that no, he's not gonna keep you alive and burn you. What kind of evil demonic thing is that? He's saying if you disobey him, and to the point where he feels like even if he was to resurrect you, you will still do the same things again. For example, the devil, then he will throw you into the lake of fire, which means he would never come back. Day and night, forever and ever and ever, you will be in jail. Remember, it's not torment. You will be in jail. You see how clear the picture is now? So right now, everybody is not in the second death. Nobody's in the second death right now. Only the first death, which is regular death. It is not by fire. They are not completely destroyed. They have hope to be resurrected again. But after the resurrection, like Revelation says, those dead in hell, the dead in the sea, and the dead in hell will be resurrected. They will be brought back. And after they have been judged, now God will determine whether they are thrown back to death a second time, which is symbolized by fire, or he would not throw them back to death. He would leave them alive and allow them to live forever and ever and ever. So those are the two forms of death. I hope that basically in simple terms. Everyone at the top of the picture is in the first death, right? If God chooses, let's say God chooses not to resurrect one person in that picture. Let's say God chooses not to resurrect somebody in that top picture where you see the burial place. Let's say he chooses not to resurrect someone. Then symbolically, that person is in the lake of fire because he is never coming back. It is as if, symbolically, it is as if God has burned that person with fire and has destroyed them because he will never come back. So let's say I'm one of those people in that graveyard. I'm one of those tombstones, right? I'm under one of those tombstones. And God never brings me back ever again. Forever and ever and ever, I am in jail in that graveyard. I am in the jail of death. I will never be resurrected. That is what the Bible calls the lake of fire. It is symbolism for saying that I will never come back because God has burned me with fire in Gehenna. He has burned this piece of paper in fire and has no intentions of ever bringing that paper back. You see? So that is the second death. So some people basically will go straight to the second death because God will never resurrect them after they have died. And you cannot say Adolf Hitler is one of them because you don't know if God is going to bring him back. But let's just say Adolf Hitler is one of those people that God has no intentions of bringing back. Let's just say hypothetically. Then that means Adolf Hitler went straight to the second death, the lake of fire, because God will never bring him back. But if a child has been aborted, has been killed innocently, right? That child is in the first death. God will not put him in the second death because God has every intention of bringing that child back from the dead. That child has only gone through the first death. He has not gone through the second death because the second death means he will never come back. Okay, I think I've explained it well enough. There's a big problem when you remove certain words and put your own ideology in the Bible. So that passage is a complete mistranslation. The word torment is supposed to be jail. Then the scriptures will make a lot more sense to you and you'll realize that God is not this wicked, evil being who loves to torment people forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. He's constantly burning them and roasting them forever and ever and ever, never stopping. To times indefinite, he's going to be burning them and roasting. That is so demonic. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And one last thing, you see the passage where Christ was on the torture stake and he told the man next to him, he said, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." This is how one comma can cause a whole dogma to fluctuate. There's a big problem when you translate things into a different language and you use different words, or put commas where they don't belong to, or instead of putting it as a question form, you put it as a statement form.